it all depends on the context, really. It depends in what context I spoke of the hope. Because I could equally remind you that there have been many occasions when I pointed out that one of the ways of having this qualitative leap is to abandon on all hope. Remember? Have you ever took part in it? Remember this suggestion that hope is a poor man's supper? Hope is a last frontier of that separate sense of self, entertaining that something can get better. Something can be prolonged because it also aims at that, at giving the validation to that what is to go. So it's hoping. So therefore hope spoken here in spiritual sense, in a negative stance. Just as allegorically we also have pointed out that hope was the last thing to fly out of the Pandora's box. Remember? Hope was the last thing to fly out of Pandora's box. What was the content of the Pandora's box? Remember? The content was meant to be locked away, under a lock. The whole meaning of the Pandora and the box, that is, under which it carries its name, was that it contained all this that can spoil our life. Spoil being here, fully present. It contained all that what tears us apart. Anger, jealousy, frustration, all these things, the so-called worldly sins were contained in that Pandora box. And the last thing fly out, apparently, according to the myth, was hope. You see? So a lot of people misinterpret that something was in Pandora's box as that kind of like you left out into the open sea, and then that hope is that saving ring, the safety ring to keep you afloat. Whereas an invitation here is to see this in a very different light. Yes, casually, when we give this to a casual, let's say that mundane that is ridden with the myriad of divisive ideas, language, when we give that to foggy perspective, we speak of hope as, well, let's hope. And of course it's a part of the language, it's way of the language in a way. This is where language speaks through us, the truth of that statement. We don't speak it, it speaks through us. All these idioms. And it's an interesting thing that whenever you go to places which are more contained, preserved, in terms of their ways of life, those little villages somewhere in England, little kind of places where people live, they have everything set up for them not to go anywhere, there's no need, everything is provided. Sainsbury will afford the possibility to eat things out of season, so it doesn't feel as if you are cut from the rest of the world. And the bizarre thing is that when you start speaking to these people, they all speak with idioms and nothing else. Do you know what idiom means in English? Maybe someone can translate idiom. Idioms. Okay, let me give it another shot. In English language, idiom means a firmly constructed sentence which somehow has come into use of any language, and it is known as such because it's being used by everyone in exactly the same way. So people recycle and use this all the time. And that's how they speak. Like, how are you, dear? Oh, don't even ask. That's an idiom, you see? Idioma, idiom. And it's full of this kind of idioms. So when we speak in that kind of language, of course we say, let's hope. Okay? So-and-so said something and let us hope so. Another one in replacement of that is fingers crossed, right? So let that indeed happen. But the term hope in itself is a treacherous term when it comes to spiritual state of affairs. So therefore maybe that's what you have encountered Osho and other teachers when they were giving it a critical assessment. Because up until we hope for something, we are already imprisoned from experiencing this reality in its free nature. Because we're already robbed. Because we hope it's going to be otherwise, other than what it is right now. That's the essence and nature of hope. And it goes deeper because what it signifies here is that it robs you from the magnanimity of who you already are at all times, irrespective of what is happening at the surface level of affair. So that's how hope is spoken of. And I don't know when you have heard me speaking about hope in positive terms. So it's a good opportunity to adjust this. Because in fact, it's an invitation. Abandon all hope. Because all hope is useless. Hope is what creates separation. Immediately, right now, right here. It makes one somehow assume that what I am right now already contracted, limited, cut off, insignificant. And then hope gives this possibility that one day, maybe, somehow, I will be, and so it goes. You see? Intention and hope are not the same thing. You see? Hope is seeing the target and thinking it's going to fall down into your frying pan and be served for dinner. That's what hope is. Intention, on the other hand, is an arrow which is shot from the skill of drawing back the bow. Very different, you see? And you need to see it, you need to really see the difference between hope and intent. Therefore, I never said stop intending. I never said intention or intending is a waste of time. Far from it. There is a funny, just came to me, in old Russian language, there is a proverb that kind of has this underpinning meaning of hope as being exactly what I said at the beginning as poor man's supper. But it's spoken in terms of that, like, a fool, not spiritual fool, fool, like a simpleton, right? Getting rich by hoping. That's kind of like a rough translation of that old Russian proverb. And that's exactly what hope means here. You see? On intent, on the other hand, is a very, very different state of affairs. You see? So this needs to be distinguished and clearly understood. And also, catch yourself in terms of the dynamics of your own self-interactions when, in your own way, each and every one of you, when you let's hope it's going to be better, it means that something is being refused here right now to accept it what it is. So therefore hope is projected immediately so as one day it will sort itself out. that is not at all a correct perspective. This perspective only justifies ignorance, we could say. It gives ignorance this legitimate justification. Therefore, uprooting that empty premise of the hope is what gives this sense of sudden, like if you ask someone, abandon the hope, it feels disorienting, it feels unsettling, it feels falling through or falling somewhere. Maybe even depressing, because all and everything was held by that hope. And yet at the very same time, it's tremendously freeing, liberating. I'm no longer hoping anything change and for anything to get better. I'm no longer hoping. Right now, everything as it is, and I'm that one. And I'm one with that what is. Nothing is in me desires anything to get better than what it is, because what it is the fullness of the expression of myself at any given moment in time. What can I hope for here? Ridiculousness of that predicament needs to be seen through and laughed at. This is why sometimes I feel that certain spiritual dialogues that we are constantly given would benefit from a healthy dosage of, let's say, Stoicism. Are you familiar with that ancient Greek philosophy? Stoics, Stoicism. You'll find a lot of parallels in the expositions of Stoicism in a lot of other cultures. That's what I often bring into the example when I spice up my discourses, when we sit together, when I bring the spiritual warrior, the samurai culture, when I bring in that being faced with adversity. And Stoicism developed itself as a philosophy in its own right. And those used to call themselves those, because it's not just one single person. It has been enriched by many great thinkers, Stoics in ancient Greece, where the very principle is that nothing ever can be wrong, only mental attitude can make so. The only thing that separates one from being happy in the given moment in time is the expectation that things can be otherwise. These are the spiritual idioms of Stoics. You see? In Stoicism, we could say, just as we spoke about, hope has no place, because hope is for the weakling, in a way for a coward, because hope introduces this, I'm suffering now, tomorrow it will be better. No, I want to deal with this right now. What is suffering? Or is this all just a charade and an opportunity, in fact, for me to see behind this charade? So this is why hope needs to be scrutinized clearly. Nothing to be confused with when we speak of tapas or intention. Remember, the first step and the last step in this path is the same. Why is it the same? Why is it the same? Why the first step and the last step are the same? Why? Because it's at the get-going, we already bring this. It's an inner admonition that I am that. And that is the only truth. That's what it means to stand as consciousness. Stand in your own sovereignty. Everything else is a complete play of consciousness that deliberately causes this delusion, illusion, and everything else. So standing as consciousness is the first step, even if you don't yet experience it fully. You may have intuited it in the past. You may have had glimpses of that. But that's the first step, and that's why we say the first and the last step are the same. The last step is not different from the first. Lest we get confused and we forget that the first step in this work, in this path, is being established in this understanding. You see? So much for hope.